This is crazy. Before showing you something Trump just posted, let's talk about the campaign side of this. We have time and time again circled back to this idea that, and reporting has bolstered this. You have a bunch of people around Trump just begging him, you can be so crazy after November 5th, but could you just be slightly normal for like 2 seconds? And most normal, not even normal, most people who have ever tasted normalcy in their own identity can fake it for just a couple months, not even, just mere weeks until the election. And Trump can't. His derangement has become so severe that he can't. And so we see over and over, even though those around him reportedly are advising him to pretend to be a more reasonable, moderate person, and he'll have those little moments where he tries for a second and it fails. Apparently, his aides couldn't stop him from posting this crazy thing that once again will be a storyline, as it should be, in the media about what he intends to do if he were to be elected. He posted this: "Cease and desist. I, together with many attorneys and legal scholars, am watching the sanctity of the 2024 presidential election very closely because I know better than most the rampant cheating and skullduggery that has taken place by the Democrats in the 2020 presidential election. It was a disgrace to our nation. Therefore, the 2024 election, where votes have just started being cast, will be under the closest professional scrutiny. And when I win, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences, so that this depravity of justice does not happen again. We cannot let our country further devolve into a third world nation, and we won't. Please beware that this legal exposure extends to lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials. Those involved in unscrupulous behavior will be sought out, caught, and prosecuted at levels unfortunately never seen before in our country." Now, you might hear that because he did his best, especially with the cease and desist. Sure, Trump, stop cosplaying like you know what you're talking about. But he tried to put it in more professional language. But we'll talk about what this means. Ron Filipkowski put it correctly. And then you gotta watch this. Doug Burgum, I know most people who, I think it's North Dakota governor, Republican, has endorsed Trump, went on TV and tried to defend what Trump has said here. Doesn't go well. So we'll watch that. But first, Ron Filipkowski said, "Deranged madman Trump promises retribution and prison for anyone who tries to steal the election from him. How many low-info voters are aware of these daily deranged rants? How much local media covers the crazy? How much network? Why do they treat him as if he isn't mentally ill?" Wow. Yeah, so without speculating on the cognitive situation, I'll just say, think about how many people Trump, after the 2020 election, accused of engaging in criminality. We're talking about hundreds of election workers based on the conspiracy theories. He said all these Republican officials who said their elections were legitimate were a part of this fraud. You have judges who had to be a part of the fraud for this all to have happened without any evidence coming forward. You had the Biden, campaign as a part of this, even though Trump was president, but they masterminded it all. And all of those people he's saying it will be a priority for him when he gets into office to try to imprison. So don't let the wording where he tries to make it seem like this legal statement he's releasing, a legal press release, fool you. That's what he's talking about. And we've seen him say in recent posts that we covered that people on the January 6th Select Committee, just politicians who investigated his election interference, they should be in prison. He's been saying media figures are criminals, thus should be prosecuted. He's been saying, obviously, a bunch of his political opponents, like Biden, should be imprisoned. And he even said he is MAGA's retribution. If that's what you want to choose over an agenda that seeks to uplift everyone, yikes. Here's Doug Burgum, which, by the way, I can't unhear a joke that Seth Meyers made about Doug Burgum's last name sounding like the noise a frog makes. Burgum. But he is, can you split screen? He's one of those people that, without getting too much into it because it's not super important, I've said before, so since I said it already, I'll say it again. There's a small number of people who give me level 1 heebie-jeebies, and he gives me that. But here's his response to this.
Let me ask you about something that former President Trump posted on social media overnight. He seemed to be escalating his threats against political opponents. Let me read you what he said. He said, quote, "When I win, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Please beware that this legal exposure extends to lawyers, political operatives, donors, illegal voters, and corrupt election officials." We should note there is absolutely no evidence that election workers have done anything corrupt. But do you think that it is appropriate to be threatening election workers in this way before the election?
All right. So you have a few options before his answer, right? And I'll be honest, I haven't watched this full answer, so we're gonna observe it all together. But Welker says, this is crazy. Last election, he said all these people, anyone who accepted the legitimate results, who participated in some way in certifying that, all criminals. And now he's saying, we're going to go put you all in jail based on the evidence that I'm going to claim I have that's non-existent. Do you remember that press conference he was going to hold where he was going to present all the evidence and was going to nuke all of his cases and he never held it? What happened to that? Burgum could say, you know what, Kristen Welker, I don't want to play into your fake news by hyperfixating on a post where he's expressing grievances about the things that were done wrong in regard to election integrity. I want to talk about the policies that made this country great, like how he oversaw a total collapse like how he did drilling or something. The majority of people who watch the show on a regular basis aren't actually subscribed to the channel. If you can make sure you are by clicking that subscribe button. Easy, free, simple, but makes all the difference. I greatly appreciate it to help us get the word out. Back to the video. Let's see how he handles it.
Well, I think it speaks to a concern that Americans have, and as we've talked about on this program before, we don't just have one election in this country. We've got elections that go across over 3,000 counties, and many of those counties have different rules. And so, again, I think what President Trump is saying, we're going to have, if we have free and fair elections, everybody's got to follow the rules, and just putting people on notice and I think this could have been a statement that could have come from the Harris campaign as well, because everybody's concerned in this country about making sure that our elections are free and fair.
Well, Governor, and a lot of those concerns you mentioned are being fueled by
that grin at the end almost made me spit my water out. It's like he was going, that made no sense. Because no, Harris wouldn't post this because she's not trying to threaten people into engaging in fraud on her behalf, which is what he's trying to do. He's trying to say, if I lose some of these battleground states, you best, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, but Republicans maybe more likely, you best just pretend that I won and try to certify that. If it's 11,780 or if it's 20,000, you better pretend that those votes exist when they don't. And Doug Burgum, I kind of had a similar answer, right? They always, Aaron Rupar has now become really known for the term sane washing. It's crazy how people can look at you straight in the eye through the camera and say a sentence that turns a crazy person's rant into a thoughtful discussion about election integrity. I just think everyone needs to follow the rules, and if Kamala Harris wins fairly, then we're good to go. Yeah, that technically is a fine statement to make, except fairly is determined by Trump, and we've already learned last time that fairly just means he has to win. All right, let's see how this continues.
These types of statements by former President Trump, but going back to the substance of what he said, he seems to be threatening these political operatives, donors, and election officials. Is that appropriate in any scenario, Governor?
Well, I think what's appropriate is that we keep working hard as a country to make sure that we've got a belief in our elections and a trust in our elections. We've got some states that remarkably have just now this year cleaned up their voter rolls and eliminating people that no longer live in the state, people that are no longer alive. And when you're talking about states taking millions of people off the voter rolls, I mean, this is just common sense database cleanup. I've spent 30 years in tech. I mean, you can't run a company if your customer database is completely out of date and has people that no longer are your customers, but you're still providing, you're still.
No one cares, Doug. Doug, why are you talking about your business? No one's asking about that. How does that relate at all? Yes, we obviously want our elections to be run logistically effectively, and there are issues on that front. We should, honestly, a lot of this has to do with convenience for people should be better, and we could have more efficient registration processes and checking people, making sure that when someone does pass away, they're removed, and we could work on those things. But the point is, to do that, we have to exist. What he's talking about, let me put it this way. He talked about his tech work, right? Which, by the way, the company he's talking about is the very company that he said when he was running for president against Trump, that Trump is so low character, he wouldn't work in business with Trump. He wouldn't associate with Trump. Okay, now he loves him. But he's talking about data, right? A lot of this has to do with streamlining election data, people's information. And the fact that we do break up so intentionally how elections are run so that it's more difficult to engage in phony election stuff because all these different entities are running their own individual geographical elections, and then it goes up to the top. That causes some complications and data could be managed better. Okay. But you don't have a single place in this conversation because you are standing by the guy who could not misunderstand election data more, or let's be honest, could not lie more about election data. His own guy, Ken Block, who went through election data to see if there was any fraud to try to give to Trump if there was, so that he could present it in court. Ken Block has obviously time and time and again come out and said the claims he's making is false, and I can demonstrate it in the data. So Doug, you're just completely missing the mark. Here's a little more.
Sending them a ballot in this case. Right. And so I think there's a number of basic things that we could all agree on that would make sure that the elections are free and fair.
And again, I hear what you're saying about the voter.
No, Doug, don't. I know this isn't important, but why is he grin like that at the end?
Things that we could all agree on that would make sure that the elections are free and fair.
And again, I hear what you're saying about the voter rolls. Important to point out, of course, there was no.
That's something. Trying to sort of stun you into forgetting what the follow-up question is that you should ask. I think Trump just, frankly, Kristen, I think Trump believes in the fundamental American principle of free and fair elections where each vote should be counted and no fraudulent votes should be counted. Dang it, I was trying to think of a more poetic way to say that. And I think right, left, and center, we can unite around this principle that former President Donald Trump is asserting in his thoughtful posts. Don't focus on what I just said. Focus on the grin.
A widespread fraud found in the 2020 election. It was deemed to be one of the safest and most secure in U.S. history. But let me ask.
Yeah, and then I guess they move on from there. So the answer is Doug Burgum pretending like a different Donald Trump exists. And they do this a lot. You read a post, you take it. You know how you can type a really jumbled thing that's just not great grammar and stuff, and throw it in a ChatGPT and say, just clean it up. And then it makes it a lot nicer. It's like the MAGA version of sane washing in the form of a ChatGPT. You take the post, you put it through the MAGA chat sane washing thing, and then it just comes out to like a really reasonable, we all just want to unite around election integrity response. But don't let people get away with that, because it's as dishonest as saying, there was millions of dead voters who voted. Same thing. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. Support the show by clicking the join button below and click the link in the description of this video to donate to Kamala Harris.